And where are you guys? I assume you're
safe and sound here.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I can't believe it's almost been a year. It has been a year since you came to visit 21C Chicago before it opened. And Bob, you arrived with lots of goodies for the store.
Yeah.
And we were only open for about 6 weeks before it shut down.
Isn't that crazy?
It's just crazy. And I'm, finally getting to the point where I'm saying, oh, it's been a year, it's been a year. And yes, have you all been in Chicago since March?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, pretty much.
We haven't really left at all. This is driving me crazy.
Oh, I like your hair, Bob.
I've been trying new things. It's COVID. You can do anything you want now.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true. Well, I wanted to leave this conversation pretty wide open. And I thought I would start with just, giving a short introduction to each of you and to what we're doing, what you're doing together right now. I'm paraphrasing to keep it short. Nick, you are an artist, educator, and messenger, which is something I want to get back to later. And you are director of the fashion program at the Graduate School of the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. You've had exhibitions and installations of sculpture, performance, video, all manner of media and museums all over the world. And most recently at the Momentary, which is part of Crystal Bridges in Bentonville, Arkansas. And you're in the collections of like the Brooklyn Museum and the Detroit Institute of the Arts and the Museum of Fine Arts Boston and San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, as well as 21C's collection. And your collaborator, Bob Faust, is a principal and creative director of Faust LLC, a cultural branding and communications firm that works on creating absorptive, immersive, well, I was going to say immersive, but you wrote absorptive visual experiences. Some of those are on view as the result of your collaboration at 21C Chicago. And so, yes, I thought we could look at some of the things that you guys have done together. And I'm going to share my screen, or attempt to anyway. Something always goes wrong in Zoom meetings, I'm finding.
Of course, right.
Do you guys see that?
We do.
Okay. I'm not sure what view it's on, but and that was from Expo Chicago, the last Expo Chicago. And here we are in the booth that you created for 21C and facility. And I thought, wow, this is a really powerful image because because I've been thinking about your work and your words, both of you, and of the projects that you've done recently using language. This installation was titled Contact Paper. People could see the rolls of contact paper that we were selling to raise money for scholarships that that you're doing through facility. And it had a double meaning, right? Contact paper, and we were making contact with people in all sorts of ways in the booth, and through conversation, sales of yoga mats and contact paper, and through sessions with the energy readers and energy reader and tarot card reader. So I felt like that was a really powerful experience for me. And for everyone who came, and we have another image here of the booth. And then, so Wallworks at 21C Chicago, these are on each of the guest room floors. There's 16 floors, 9 different patterns are being combined. And these are inspired by or taken from 3-dimensional works. Like, do you want to say a few words about these, what it was like to make them and how you think of them as like portals, because this is a very shallow space, and you're really immersed in the pattern and color.
Yeah, I think that, you know, you tasked us with this kind of challenging space, but it also was like an amazing opportunity because it's this tiny space that travels up all of these floors. And so how do you make each floor different, but feel like it's part of a whole? And the perfect way to start is with sound suits and how connected they are as a kind of work that Nick does, but also so very unique. Each one is so very unique. And so we took these tiny little details from sound suits primarily, but also some other tondos and works like that, and extrapolated them into big immersive patterns that make you feel like you're almost absorbed inside a sound suit, or like brushing up against a sound suit. And so we kind of took advantage of that compression space and went really big and bold with pattern making in order to kind of elicit a response, like a visceral response.
Yeah, and I think too, something that's interesting is that, you know, we're almost, you know, it's almost as if you are sort of skinning
Yeah.
a surface with pattern. And so, or tattooing a surface. So, you know, it being so small, but yet it's very immersive and very sort of big in terms of how it consumes you the moment that you get off the elevators. And so I think that kind of connection, the kind of relationship with scale, proportion, that in some cases, you know, depending on if you're seeing just a blown up image of the pattern that becomes a repeat, it's such a contrast between the two that you can't believe that this comes out of that. And so I think there's all of these sort of interesting sort of discoveries as you really pay attention to what you're seeing.
And the image on the right is from a sound suit made from buttons.
Buttons, yeah.
Yeah. And so we should maybe explain, like, the sound suits have been made in all sorts of materials, from twigs and hair and buttons and toys and all sorts of, you know, there's hundreds of them. But they were, and they sound, well, the sound suits evokes a kind of joyfulness or play. And yet they came from a place of, you know, wanting to express protest against racial violence, which, you know, you've been doing for a couple of decades now, but you lure people in with the beauty and the pattern and the tactility and the movement, and then give them something to think about, which is listening closer. And the one on the left, I believe that image is from a recent series of wall sculptures made from wire hair called the tondos, in which the patterns, from weather patterns, extreme weather patterns, were overlaid on scans from the brains of young Black boys, I think, who have been suffered from PTSD from gun violence. So all of these messages are embedded in these works, and they give us something to think about, as well as like animate the space. And I I wish I could have seen your show, the show at the Momentary, because, you know, it looks so joyful, and yet it poses important questions like, is there racism in heaven, until we are all equal? And it depends, I think for me, I was thinking about that question, it depends on who's designing heaven.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of designing heaven, though, not designed. You know, present tense is kind of a nice way to think about it.
Yeah, like what's your concept of heaven?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And how, so I want to go ahead and show you the last image that I pulled up, to get the conversation started, is this one, which is your collaborative installation at Jack Shademan's schoolhouse in upstate New York, which until, it was, let's see, less than a week ago, it was designated what you had conceived it as, a work of art.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about what happened when that went up, and who was having trouble accepting it as a work of art, in this context right now of this very, very moment? There's an impeachment trial happening because of words and the power that words have. And I thought, this work seemed so prescient, and it went up when, in the fall sometime, right before the election. Words are, and right now we are listening to what the power of words can unleash. But this is the other side of that. They can unleash violence, they can unleash hate, they can, but they can also, unleash the truth and a kind of coming together. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything about this project, or let it speak for itself.
I think that it's very interesting that when this was conceived was shortly after the George Floyd incident. This was a series of immediate, urgent art projects that Nick developed for the gallery in order to keep the conversation going. So Truth Be Told was very much connected to that incident. When it actually got installed was just before the election. And it's funny that the same need to say the same saying was so important. And the minute it went up is the minute that people got up in arms because of the whole conversation of what is true, what is not true, what's okay to say, what's okay to stretch, what's not okay to stretch. And the small town government up there thought it was absolutely a statement against the current president at the time, which it of course could be as well. I mean, that is part of it as well. But they got really up in arms because it took a long time to put this thing up. And as you can imagine, TRU going up in that order is also setting up a whole bunch of other red flags. So like the whole town was a little bit up in, yeah, that's the right word, on edge, because they didn't know really what was going on. And then I think they were just like grasping at straws to like, how do you get this thing down? When of course it's an artwork. It's not a sign. It's not telling you a date, time, place. It's enveloping a building. I mean, it's just craziness.
And we're just in this, we were in this sort of time, we're in this time of of urgency. We're in this time of transition. We're in this time of really grappling with how are we going to come together as a world, as a country. Uh, you know, through riots, through vandalism, through attacking the White House. At the end of the day, it all comes down to truth.
Right. And not wanting to be confronted with the truth.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so, in spite of how one may sort of show that, illustrate that, it all comes back to that. And so, we've been, dealing with the president for the last 4 years and all of this sort of stretch propaganda. And so, and just sort of, at some point, all of that sort of comes to a halt, comes to the front. And so, it's, we think about like Georgia and like, the runoffs and like it all comes down to truth be told. I mean, we didn't know which way it was going to go, but here we are with a result. And so again, we're sort of in this sort of space of we've got to continue this sort of dialogue around issues of race, issues of inequality, injustice. And I think as artists, I think we have to also ask ourselves the bigger question, what are we, how can we be more proactive, more responsible, and what does that look like, and how do we get the message out to the world, not contained within an institution? How do we sort of look at the world? What is outside of our doors that we can utilize as a way of continuing to be part of a process that we will always be in? There will always be conversations about something. And so in order for us to move together collectively, we've got to have those spaces that allow this kind of thing to happen.
I'm going to stop screen sharing now so I can see you guys. That leads me to tell you how much I loved another project that you did along those lines, which was Amends. That you gave over the storefront of your facility, studio, lab, home, and had invited people to share instances of racism that they've perpetuated or been part of, or just an acknowledgement of privilege. And I think that's so important. I think it's so important. And I loved reading your account of how that project got started. Bob, you guys were marching in a protest, and I believe, Nick, you said if you're going to march about it, we got to talk about it. And I am finding, and I'm sure many other people are, that there's such discrepancy between what different groups of people are willing to talk about. And what we need is to kind of create a baseline by saying everybody is responsible, and explaining what systemic racism is, because it feels overwhelming when you talk about something as systemic, but it's only through individual action that we can change it.
Yeah.
And that was the point of your project. And it has continued, online, on social media. And, have you gotten, how was the response from the neighborhood when you invited people to participate?
I mean, for the most part, the reaction has been very, very positive. People are happy that there's, you know, a stake was literally put into the sand to say, hey, let's start talking about this. People loved that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say we also had the opposite happen, as you can imagine, because it is an issue that people take sides on. And even people who you think are fully on the side of equality, many of them don't realize their own role within it. And that's why this project was so important. It was to put those examples of folks who you'd never imagine would consider themselves racist, but asking them to find that within themselves and then be vulnerable enough to share it so that we can then point and say, this is what we mean by that. And it's not about calling you out, it's about calling everybody out.
Yeah, yeah. Or I think as you said, you know, calling people in.
Yeah.
Calling people in. And when you do that, you allow a kind of vulnerability that leads to truth telling.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just, I can't believe that anyone would not welcome that opportunity to be vulnerable, especially after what we witnessed on January 6th, which was just, you know, ripping the veil off of any illusion of not being a racist society. That is, you know, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm trying, like many people, welcoming opportunities to have these kinds of conversations with people, with the whole, you know, range of people, and whether it's at work or at home. It's part of what we need to move forward as a society, or at least together. I don't know. I mean, I want to celebrate the power of art to do that. And I don't think I don't know if you all are more hopeful about art being center stage, or you're looking for more opportunities to integrate it into everyday life where people will have to bump up against it.
I think both of those things.
Yeah.
Both of those things.
Yeah, when you think about the inaugural ceremonies, I mean, it was loaded with lots of art.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I was on Zoom meetings, to be honest with you, and I was watching it on my phone at the same time. And then I, you know, as soon as my meetings were over, like I replayed Amanda Gorman's poem on repeat like 20 times with tears and joy. And she said something, not in her poem, but she referenced like her own mantra that she recites before she gives a poem. And she, you know, she recited her lineage, and I am a writer who's descended from writers who are descended from freedom fighters, and then she said, the ancestors, they call me. And I thought of you, I thought of you, Nick, because I always have this feeling when when you're present that there are a lot of other people there.
Great, I need protection.
Oh, now you know what it's like to sit at dinner together.
Really? So Bob, you commented on the Wallworks at 21C Chicago by saying something wonderful, which is there's good juju in there.
Yeah.
And I started to connect all these things. And I think that your focus on community and community engagement is not just about whatever institution that you're working in, or you know, certainly you've done wonderful things in Shreveport and in Boston, and you know, and in I remember Kansas City, where you work with people in the community, but I think that it extends beyond that into like a spiritual dimension.
I like that.
Yeah, in this, in a very tangible way. And also, like, did you love the way that she performed, and her Amanda Gorman, and she's such a performance poet. Yeah,
I mean, look at her as an example of all the ways that you can become more effective as a human being in the world. We were all ready to listen to her because of the way that she presented herself way before she took the podium.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
she was ready for that, and it wasn't about how she was dressed or how, you know, what she looked like. It was about what you felt from her presence, right? And that was incredible, because when she stepped up there, that's when you noticed how small she was. You
yes,
didn't know that beforehand, and then you saw that, but you were now ready for something to be unleashed, and boy did she. It was amazing. And I think that if we all step into ourselves every day with that thought about how are we going to be in the world, boy, would it be really interesting. Wouldn't it be
Well,
just like a powerful place to be?
and just think about, like, if we all sort of stepped in the world in terms of serve, like, how are we serving every day? And what does that look like, and what does that mean? That's what gives you power, is that you are here to serve. And whatever that looks like, I mean, that's enormous in terms of responsibility, in terms of standing in that and taking on that responsibility. Um, and so it's just interesting to sort of think about ways in which we can uh, be very much a part of change and be very effective.
a
That's,
lot of people don't know where to start, right? So you all start with materiality. You know, that's how, like, you bring your service to life through creating material, and which then, creates experiences. A lot of people aren't comfortable, thinking about how the mystery of that. And I want to ask you about how you manifest these things, right? How you come up with the ideas, because if more people could get comfortable with their thoughts and with just responding and living in the moment, then they would find a way to create something that serves.
well, I think that you have to step up to fear.
Yeah,
I think that everything that we do is really based on what is currently going on in the world.
right.
And so making the decision that I'm not going to stand for that, and what do I stand for? Um, and it really is just you having a conversation with a friend, or you know, doing a sort of a Zoom sort of gathering with a group of friends. It's one person, it's 10 people, it's 20 people. But I think that we have to sort of go internally and
Yeah,
ask ourselves, what I saw when it came to George Floyd, is that okay
right,
or not?
right, right.
I think also, like, this is not the flip side, maybe it's a continuation of, but I also think that if you take just a moment to step outside of yourself, so we're talking a lot about what comes from inside, but if you also take a second to step outside of yourself before you step into a situation, that perspective, that minute, that quiet, that pause allows for whatever happens next to be so much more purposeful.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it may be that it's, you talking with your family
yep,
at the moment. And those are big steps uh, for families to come together. You know, it was a big step for me and Bob to come together. You know, I'm dealing with it very differently than he was dealing with it. But we were, you know, we had to have these real hard conversations in order for us to sort of realize that we have to be part of the cause.
Yeah, yeah.
And not the issue. And so, and then looking at, you know, it was the first time we really looked at facility and asked ourselves, you know, why do we have this property? What is its purpose? And so we really started to look at that and realize how we could use it in many different ways to again, to communicate.
Right. So what is happening at the facility now? Has it been affected? Have your activities been affected by the pandemic? Of course they have.
Well, it's different right now. Like right now we're using it for, it's very COVID related. So at the end of last year, Nick's graduate students generally get to have an exhibition, but they weren't allowed to have an exhibition at school. So we've been turning it over to all of those graduates from 2020, and they're having storefront exhibitions in the space. So every month we're rotating another student in. And so for the community and for Chicago, these are very accessible during COVID because they're through the window from the sidewalk. But also these students are getting a chance to realize the work that they put in an actual space, write their statements, complete that education. So this is going to go all the way until next October.
Great, great. I mean, I think people are finding ways bringing art to the public. And by and large, most of the projects that I've seen are really, really responsive to the current environment. And that's something that, you know, we really applaud. And I had, you know, just, well, even before the rigmarole, the craziness of last summer happened, in putting together like the exhibition that's at 21C Chicago, I had come to this conclusion that it was time to like really be honest about, you know, what present the work of artists like as they would want it. And it's a show about divisiveness and, you know, and ideology and adherence to ideology at the expense of another. But so much of it is, you know, artists like Titus Kaphar and Inga Shonabari and Kara Walker, who are really laying bare the legacy of racism in this country. And I'm just committed to, you know, my way of serving is to be honest and to give artists like you all a platform to speak from. Just, you know, to speak from. I wanted to ask you about something else that you were working on when last spring, which was a Chicago version of the Let Go. Did that happen?
No, unfortunately.
No, that is one that totally requires people in a space together, and it was just timed inappropriately, not inappropriately, unfortunately. So we hope to bring that back to Chicago again when it's safe. But there is some more in the works that we're not talking about quite yet. So we're getting ready for that to show up in the world soon.
Well, experiencing that at the Park Avenue Armory was one of the most pleasurable experiences that I've had. I was with my kids. They were then teenagers, and it was a really hot day. And I couldn't get them to, you know, walk very far. So I said, oh, let's, I think we were like on the way from, you know, MoMA to the Guggenheim, and let's go in here. And, you know, sure enough, like it was just immediately engaging. And there were dancers in there. I think there were people who were, just, brought in during the course of the day to dance and to get people dancing. And I long for the day that we can do things like that again.
Right?
Yes, yes, yes. And another project that I've seen recently is your monument, that's such a loaded word these days, monument for the High Line
Oh.
in New York, the rendering. And it's called Amalgam. Amalgam. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like, I couldn't see a picture of it close up.
It's really, it's me. I've always sort of been, again, it's about sort of access, and for me, it's like, still thinking about ways to get my work in the world.
Yes.
And so bronze, I've been thinking about bronze for probably 5 years. And so this will be the second sort of bronze if I am chosen to do. And it's really about sort of, I'm interested in, again, sort of taking what is the original sound suit, those ideas, and moving it into this medium. With that particular piece, it's really about, it comes out of the research of looking at the family tree and what that's all made of. And so this sort of figurative sort of form also becomes this migration hub where, which is made up of birds, national birds from around the entire country. And so it's really about coming together. It's about flocking together. It's about community. It's about building. It's about nesting. And it's about unity.
The ancestors again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I wanted to ask about one more thing. When I came to visit you the first time and the second time, I noticed that I was blown away by your own collection of artworks by other artists, by other contemporary artists. And I recently heard that you have work by a friend of mine, Beverly McKeever. So I was thrilled knowing that you had her work as well as many other, artists of your time. Why is that? How is that important to you? And how does that influence your own sort of practice to be surrounded by all of this great, work that's being made in the same time that you're working?
I think for us, it's to be able to wake up to your destiny, in your destiny is everything. And so, being able to have the space is really the first space in terms of studio spaces that we've been in where we can like now live and work with art completely around us. And that really makes a big difference to come into a space and that it's really rooted and grounded in creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've always been, when I was in undergrad school, I didn't know trading was collecting, but me and my sort of colleagues and friends, we all traded. And so that was sort of the beginning of, sort of ownership and collecting work by your friends. And so that just sort of led into, the first, let's say, solo exhibition I had. I was, was the beginning of me really buying my first sort of work of art. And so I've always been interested in collecting. I've always been interested in supporting young artists.
Yeah.
because I know what that feels like when you sell a piece and what
Yeah.
that's to you. And so it's nice to be to have it around us, and it really is food for our soul. And
I think that's the most important
Yeah.
part about it is like, I think every creative space, everyone who works in a creative space is surrounded by creativity, but it is very rare that you're surrounded by so many different types of people's very best work, surrounding you. It's not
Yeah.
in process, it's complete and it's presented as a cohesive show, and Nick curates shows within our studio space and home, which is super exciting, because you also know that this is for a limited time, and you're going to that work and looking at that work because it's there for that amount of time. It's different.
Yeah. So you are putting different works of art together, in different combinations, and it keeps your eye and mind fresh. And one of the things that we tell people about coming to 21C is that art has a kind of ability to change perspectives and start conversations. And whether you are intentional or whether you allow the art to affect you almost by osmosis. I had a funny experience a few years ago. We were listening to a focus group, and this one guest said, I come here a lot, and I for business, and I stay frequently. And he said, I don't really know anything about the art, but I'm pretty sure I'm becoming a better person. And I said, you are.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, again, but like back to your juju, Bob. No, I mean, I really, it's a funny sounding word, but it means something intangible and yet really powerful. And it's always the energy, which is, it's embedded in the work and it's visible in the work, but you take away the energy and how that it's affected you. And that's what makes you look at the world differently. It raises questions. And that's, I think, the role of the art and the role of the artist is to inspire questions and not look at things the same way. And if we can do that, then maybe there's hope of making lasting change. But I say that hearing the irony in that statement, which, lasting change is.
Lasting change. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like change begets more change begets more.
Yes. Like Octavia Butler said, it's the only lasting truth.
Yeah.
Is change. So is there anything, I want to be cognizant of your time. Is there anything you want to tell me about that you're working on or that you want to share with people?
Lots of secretive stuff to be announced soon.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess I guess. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to be back in Chicago soon, as soon as travel restrictions are lifted, and welcome people back to 21C, and welcome you guys. And I just want to send you hugs and lots of good energy, and say that I haven't forgotten about our conversation about doing some kind of performance around fashion and the, at 21C, we got a big old space there. So thank you so much.
We're down for it all.
Okay.
Thank you. This was a great way to spend our lunch hour.
Really
nice.
Well, I'd hope to be in my office at downtown, but we have a lot of snow and ice here because in my office are hanging not one, but two sort of curtains that were your design
Oh,
for the Frist, the
oh,
show at the,
oh,
yeah,
oh.
yeah,
We call that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was the lucky recipient of not one, but two, so I could cover up my whole glass office wall, and I was gonna sit in front of it, but, you know, with my water bottle, which is also there. So, but we live on a hill, and I wasn't gonna make it out of the driveway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I feel your energy whenever I'm in my office, and I think about you guys so much. That was, you know, we really means a lot that you created these special wall works for us, and I hope that our experience at Expo, creating contact paper, will, you know, have ripples. Certainly, like, you know, beyond what the money that was raised, and I want to, you know, we'll keep going and find other ways to collaborate to benefit the young people in Chicago and beyond. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Thanks,
Alrighty.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.